Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, everyone, depending upon where you are. Thank you for coming. This is our third week in our Baker's Dozen series of new features in SQL Server 2012. My name is Kevin Goff. I'm a SQL Server MVP, and we will get going here. This is, if you're joining this for the first time, this is part 3 in a 13-part weekly series on new features in SQL Server 2012. I'm a believer in demos that go right to the code, right to the facts. Anybody remembers the old Dragnet show? My belief is the Sergeant Joe Friday, just the facts approach to any presentation. And this week we are going to be looking at the new FileTable feature in SQL Server 2012. Now, just a little bit of information on me. As I said, I'm a SQL Server MVP. I train for a company called SetFocus. If you have any training needs in the SQL Server or .NET or SharePoint or Business Intelligence area, you can go to our site at setfocus.com. We also have a free training portal, which is freetraining.setfocus.com. The only thing you need to write down here is my website, which is kevinsgoff.net, which I have down here at the bottom, because my site has the slide deck and all the code I'm going through already up there. Trying to get in the practice of getting my slides up on the site before the presentation starts. And actually, just to show you that site, if you go to kevinsgoff.net, over on the right-hand side, I have a category that's reserved specifically for this webcast series. So if you go to the Microsoft webcast series, here's a little bit of information about the series. And here's the schedule for the entire 13 weeks. And as we get to a particular demo week, I've got the download examples. So you can actually go up on the site right now and pull down the example code for this week as well as the slide deck that I'm going through. So kevinsgoff.net, only thing that you need to write down from here. Okay, well, in the first 2 weeks, we took a look at the new column store index and the new Transact SQL enhancements in SQL Server 2012. Every download in every week has the material from the prior week. So if you actually pull down the download for this week, for week 3, that actually contains everything in the first 2 weeks. So you can just cumulatively just pick the most recent download, and that has all of the content from the prior weeks. So this week we're going to take a look at the new FileTable enhancement in SQL Server 2012. So I'm going to jump forward a little bit through the first set of slides from the first few weeks and get to part 3 here. And we're going to talk this week about the new FileTable feature. Now, this is some might make the comment with reason that the FileTable feature is maybe a little bit more of a specialized feature in SQL Server 2012 compared to, say, T-SQL features. That's probably true. However, this is a feature that more and more people over the course of time are probably going to have an interest in learning. If you have followed SQL Server for several years, you know that there's been a debate back and forth about where do you store large objects, where do you store images, where do you store maybe binary content. Do you store it in the database, or do you just simply store it out in the file system and have the database contain nothing more than references to the files and folders? Well, along came the FileStream approach back in SQL Server 2008, which really took that functionality to the next level. But Microsoft has done one better in SQL Server 2012. They have implemented a new FileTable object that actually runs on top of the FileStream object that allows us, in a nutshell, to maintain the content of files out in a folder system through DML statements. It is a combination of a database table and a file system in one, and it works very, very well. For a long time, I have to admit, I was on the side where I preferred not to store database content in the database. I preferred to store freeform and just have references to the information. Well, this is probably going to cause some people to have a paradigm shift. Maybe not right away, but over the course of time, they're going to find that this is going to become a very standard way to integrate non-relational data into and references to it into the database system. This works very, very well, as we're going to see as we go through some demonstrations here in just a moment. So they've added a new FileTable feature that provides a mechanism to store the entire folder system structure into a special database table. A file table is a special database table with a predefined schema. And we're going to go through a couple of demos, some basic demos, where I'm going to store some images in a folder structure, and I'm going to store some Word documents in a folder structure, and then reference them through the file table in SQL Server, and be able to do things like set the attributes on the files, as well as implement some text searching. Now, there is some housekeeping work that has to be done in order to set this up, and that's why having some basic examples will help here. So I am actually going to go right over into SQL Management Studio. So I'm going to change my desktop here. And hop right over into Management Studio. And by the way, if you're watching the webcam, probably noticed my really fancy 1960 style glasses. I actually lost my regular reading glasses, and the only pair that I have are the tinted pair. So you get the nice tinted reading glasses effect here. Well, I'm going to hop over to Management Studio, and first of all, this demo is going to do a fair amount of tabbing back and forth between SQL Management Studio and Windows Explorer. I'm going to try not to tab too fast, but I'm going to be doing some jumping around because in order to really demonstrate this, have to do some things both in Management Studio as well as out in the file system. But try to make it painless for anybody watching out there. Well, over in Management Studio, I have a solution. It's one that I've been adding on to as we've been going through the subsequent weeks. So the first query file up here, first couple dealt with the column store index, and then the next 9 or 10 here dealt with the T-SQL enhancements. Well, now we're down here to the 13th file, which is the FileTable demo. So I'm going to open this up. Now, first of all, some housekeeping right off the bat. Because the FileTable enhancement works on top of the FileStream capability that was implemented back in SQL Server 2008, we need to turn FileStream on. Now, there are two steps that if you never turn FileStream on when you install SQL Server, there are two things you need to do. First of all, you need to run spconfigure to turn on FileStream access. So these two lines of code need to be executed to turn on FileStream. However, you may still get error messages if you try to implement this functionality saying the FileStream access is not enabled. What you also have to do is go over to the Configuration Manager and go into Properties for the SQL Server instance that you're on, and actually turn on FileStream. So in addition to these lines of code, over in SQL Management, over in SQL Server Configuration Manager, and I've got notice I've got two different instances here for 2008 R2 and 2012. So far the two different instances have played very nicely together. Well, you need to go to the instance of the server. In this case, I have a named instance, SQL 2012, and go to Properties in the Configuration Manager, and there's a tab for FileStream. This needs to be enabled. Now, I've got enabled both for Transact SQL access as well as for I/O access, and the Windows share name, and that's going to become very important here in a few minutes, is SQL 2012. If we're going to access any files that are controlled under the file stream, there's a Windows share name associated with it, and in my case, it's the same name as the SQL Server instance, which is SQL 2012. So these need to be turned on. Now, this is the only time I'm going to have Configuration Manager open, was just to show this. So I'm actually going to close Configuration Manager now. I'm going to keep the number of windows I have to a minimum. And I'm going to create a brand new database called FileTable Example DB. Now, because I might already have it out here, I'm going to drop it. So I'm going to use the master and drop FileTable Example DB if I already have it. And I'm going to create an empty database where I'm going to turn FileStream on. So I'm going to create an empty database called FileTable Example DB. And I'm specifying my full path where the primary data file, where the transaction log is going to reside. And I'm also turning on FileStream. So notice how in the file group I'm indicating that this is going to utilize FileStream. So that keyword is required in order to have FileStream on the particular database. So I'm going to execute this, and this is going to create just an empty database. Obviously no tables in it, just an empty database. Well, if I go over to Windows Explorer and I take a look on my local network here, I've got my share for SQL Server 2012, and right now there's nothing in here. Nothing in here yet. That's about to change. I'm going to come back to the SQL code here. I'm going to use that database, that empty database I just created. Now, first of all, a little bit of background information. One of the system tables we can query from is sys.database files. I'm going to query from sys.database files while I'm using that FileTable Example DB, and I see that there are 3 different file IDs that are available. One is for the primary data file, the other is for the transaction log, and then there's this third one, the file group for the file stream. Well, I'm going to now specify a directory name associated with that database. Now, this could have been done back in the original create database statement. Back when I created the database, I could have specified the directory name. Just to be different here, I'm going to run an alter database statement and set the directory name for the file stream to be FileTable Example DB. And I'm going to specify non-transacted access for this to be full. So I will execute this. Well, now if I go back over to that folder and I refresh it, now I see the FileTable Example DB folder that is associated with the directory name for the file stream here. That's going to become important because I'm going to implement some file tables that are going to show up as folders in this structure. So this is going to grow here in just a minute. Now, by the way, just some other background information. There is also a system table we can query from. It's sys.database_filestream_options. If I query where the directory name is not null, I now have on my server one database, one file stream database where the directory name has been specified. And just to keep it simple, it's the same name as the database. Okay, well, let's actually create something here. Now, what I'm going to do here in just a minute, out in another folder, just on my local C drive, I've got a couple of logos. I'm a baseball fan. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a major sports junkie in general. Well, I've got a couple of logos for a couple of baseball teams that I follow: the Oakland A's, the Milwaukee Brewers, the Baltimore Orioles, and my beloved Philadelphia Phillies, who won their first game yesterday. Well, these are just out on my C drive. They're not associated with the file stream or with this file table in any way. In a minute, I'm going to actually drop these into a folder that's going to be associated with a file table. But at the moment, they're not associated with this in any way. Well, I'm going to create a table inside of this file table example database. And I'm going to call it TBL file table baseball logos. Now, unlike a normal create table statement where we specify the schema, I'm going to specify it as a file table. We don't set the columns. There's a preset schema that we're going to see here in just a minute. Now, I'm going to associate it with, or I'm going to specify a file table directory, and I'm going to just keep it the same name as the table. These can be different, but I'm going to keep them the same name. And I'm going to utilize the correlation sequence that I'm utilizing for my database default. So I'll create this table. Well, I'll go back over to Windows Explorer inside of this inside of my SQL 2012 share that's associated with FileStream, and I now have a folder called TBL FileTable Baseball Logos. Now there's nothing in it right now. Now back in the database, if I query from this table, if I query from that same table I just created, there's nothing in this as well. However, the FileTable mechanism is maintaining association between that database table we're querying from and this folder. I can now drop files into this folder structure, and I'm going to be able to see them inside of here. Now, I'm not going to look at the structure yet. I'm going to actually put some files in here and take a look at the rows that show up, and then take a look at the structure. The structure would make a little bit more sense once we have a little bit of information in it. So I'm going to take these 4 logo files here and right-click and copy them, and then come back over, and again, I'm going to try to minimize the hopping around here. I'm going to right-click and paste them into this folder structure that's being controlled by the file table and by FileStream. Well, now I'll come back to Management Studio, and I'll query the same table that was empty a minute ago. Well, now I have 4 rows in here, so things have obviously changed. Well, let's take a look at the structure. Let's take a look at some of the contents in here. Well, first of all, there's a unique identifier that's associated with each stream. And notice how there's another column here called FileStream. That is the actual contents. That is the actual data associated with those 4 JPEGs. There's the file name. That's the same file names as what we just dropped into here. Now there's also a column called Path Locator. Now there, as it turns out, there's some functions that are associated with FileTable that we're going to look at in just a few minutes that will actually give us the logical path associated with this. Now they're in the root, so the parent path locator is null. Now notice how it also picked up the file type, the file size, when they were created, when they were last accessed, and also out here, some of the attributes. Are the files hidden? Are they read-only? Is the archive bit set, etc.? Well, we can now maintain these files either by issuing DML statements against this table, this file table, or we can set them over here in the folder structure out in the file system, and there's going to be maintenance that's going to be done between the two. The two are going to be kept in sync. So as an example, right now none of these are read-only. Well, I'll take all 4 files, and I'll right-click, and I'll go to Properties, and I'll set them as read-only, all 4 of them, and click OK. Tick Apply, and then click OK. So now they are read-only. Well, if I query from this table again, now the read-only bit is turned on. And obviously I can go back here, select all 4 and reverse that. Turn the read-only attribute off. Query from here again. And now they're gone. Or now they're back to 0. Well, we can also do it from Management Studio through a basic update statement. I can update that table. I can set the is read only column to 1. So I'll execute this. And then I will come back to Windows Explorer, and I'll take a look at any one of these. Go to the properties, and the read only flag has been set based upon the update statement that I just ran. So what we've got here is the ability to maintain the contents in this folder structure, which is being run under the file table, which is being run under FileStream, either out here in the file system or using basic update statements. Now, we can also maintain the list by actually deleting rows in here. So if I want to get rid of one of the files, if I want to get rid of the JPEG for the Oakland Athletics here, I'll just delete from that file table where the name equals athletics.jpg. And then if I come back here and right-click and refresh contents, well, now the athletics JPEG is gone. And then if I get rid of one of the teams here, if I click on the Brewers and just simply delete it, and then come back over to your Management Studio and query from the table. Well, now I'm down to 2 rows. So I deleted the athletics here from a DML statement. I deleted the Brewers just out in the operating system in Windows Explorer, and in both instances, both pieces of information are kept up to date. So if you have the need to maintain non-relational data, JPEGs, other types of files, binary content, Word documents, we're going to see an example of searching on Word documents in a minute. This becomes a very easy way to maintain the relationship between the two. So, I'm going to come back to my slide deck here. So again, we have a file table feature that is a combination of a table and a file system in one. So this file table feature is new in SQL Server 2012. Now, one note, I meant to mention this at the beginning. An enhancement that Microsoft has made with the FileStream object in general, the reading of the FileStream is significantly faster in SQL Server 2012. It is up to 5 times faster than it was in prior versions of SQL Server that had the FileStream object. And again, this is a mechanism to map the folder system structure to a special database table, and then maintain a relationship from either side. So we can store the content associated with files and documents in a file table within a database where FileStream is turned on, and maintain the contents as if they were stored in the file system by utilizing DML statements. So this opens the door for applications that need to maintain the content of a hierarchical-like folder structure using DML and other database operations. And again, as we saw, there are some steps we need to go through. We need to configure an instance of SQL Server for FileStream access. We need to create an empty database with FileStream turned on. We need to set the directory name reference associated with the FileStream. And then we need to create file tables that are going to hold contents for specific directories. So a little bit of work at the beginning, but definitely worth it. Now, moving on here, some of the uses for FileTable, we already saw one, and that was some kind of a data-driven approach to maintain file attributes. Another is the ability to integrate full text search. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to add a second file table to this database, and going to put in some Word documents, and then implement a full text search utilizing a SQL Server. So an application for this, and I think back to an application I did many years ago. I did an application for an employment agency, for a headhunter shop, and this was over 15 years ago. And they had many resumes that they wanted to implement text searches on. Well, if you think about the state of the tools 15 years ago versus now, kind of thing would be very easy to implement with the file table feature. We could implement FileTable. We could utilize the Microsoft Filter Pack in order to be able to search on Word document content, as we're going to see. And we could create a full text index and then implement full text searches against the Word documents using FileTable. Now, just some information for if you want to recreate this demo on your computer, assuming you have SQL Server 2012. you'll need to install the Microsoft Filter Pack. I'm actually going to be doing some text searches against the Microsoft DocX file extension, and so you have to install the Microsoft Filter Pack and then Service Pack 1. And I actually have the links here. So let me come back over to Management Studio. So I'll come back to my desktop. And give this a minute here. Now, I mentioned that you'll need to install the Microsoft Filter Pack 2.0 and then Service Pack 1. After you do that, there is a system table that we can take a look at that has a full list of file types that are supported for full text searches. And it's sys.fulltext_document_types. So if I execute this query, well, I see about 157 different file types where we can implement full text searches. And the most important one here, if I scroll down, is the docx format. So I actually have the Office filter installed in order to implement full text searches for Microsoft for the newer versions of the Microsoft Word document format. Now, after you install that filter pack, you may very well need to execute a system store procedure called full text service to actually load any additional resources you might have pulled down from the filter pack. So you may need to run these two system store procedures, both to load the operating system resources from the filter pack, and then to reset those filters. And then in addition, need to restart the SQL Server service as a whole. So these system store procedures are going to be necessary after pulling down the filter pack and executing it. Well, now that I can search on anything with the docx extension, I'm going to create another file table, and I'm going to call this TBL Resume Word Docs. Now it's going to be the same syntax as before, except I'm just calling it Resume Word Docs instead of the baseball logos. And I'll give the file table directory the same name as the other table here. And so I'll execute this. Well, out of the operating system, come back one folder. Now I have another folder called TBL Resume Word Docs. Now there's nothing in here. I need to put in some resumes in just a minute. Now, a couple of other things we need to do. If I want to implement full text search, what I'm eventually going to do, if you want to see how this is going to end, a little bit down further, I'm going to actually query some manual resumes I'm going to put in here. And I want to find all of the resumes that have the word SQL Server in it. So in order to utilize the full text search, coming back up here, a little bit of work that we need to do. We need to create a full text catalog. Well, I'll simply call it My Full Text Catalog. So I will create a full text catalog here. And then something we need to do, whoops, scroll down a little bit too far there, sorry about that. Then the next thing we need to do, we need to actually create a full text index associated with that file table. Now we need to actually grab, and so one note here, if you recreate this demo, you're going to need to change the name of the index here if you want to write this out as a script. We need to create a full text index on that file table. And we need to apply the primary key that was created by SQL Server when that file table was established. If I come over here to Object Explorer and I refresh my list of file tables here, well, I've got TBL Resume Word Docs. And if I take a look at the columns, they're the columns that were created when we create that file table. As I said, there's a preset schema for all the different file attributes, for the unique identifier, for the file stream itself, for the name of the object, etc. Well, if I expand the keys, There's a primary key associated with this. I need to actually grab that name and paste it in for the key index associated with full text index. So I will paste in this name. And create the full text index. I've got a full text index on that table. Now remember, that table is maintaining the content associated with, in this case, any Word documents I put in that folder. So this will all come together in just a minute. Now, one thing about the full text index that I'm implementing on the name and on the file stream itself, which actually has the information from the Word documents. Notice the language support here for the default code page for good old English language. Well, if I query from that table right now, if I simply say select star from TBL resume Word docs, because I don't have any Word documents or anything else out there, this is empty. Well, I'm about to change all that. I'm going to come out to that folder, and I'm going to create two subfolders. I'm going to create one folder, and I'll call it Resumes East Coast, and I'll create another folder, and I'll call it Resumes West Coast, because we may very well have all of our resumes broken up into different parts of the country, or by some other entity. Well, I'll go into resumes for the East Coast. I'm going to create two very, very simple Word documents in each of the two folders. So I will right-click and create a new Word document. Call this Resume Kevin Goff. And I'll right-click and create another Word document here, and I'll say Resume John Smith. My apologies to anybody with the name of John Smith out there. And in Resume Kevin Goff, all I'm going to put in here is name is Kevin Goff and works with SQL Server, and that's it. And I'll save this. And then I'll go into Resume John Smith, and I'll put in here resume for John Smith and works with Oracle. So I've got two resumes in this folder. One person works with SQL Server and the other one doesn't. Well, I'll come down to the resumes for the West Coast and basically do the same thing here. So I'll create another Word document. I'll say resume for Mark Wilson. Again, hopefully nobody out there with that name. And then another one, resume J. Smith. Now notice I don't have to have any particular naming convention for these files. These are, for all intents and purposes, these are freestanding files. I'll go to the resume for Mark Wilson. I'll put in the name Mark Wilson, and Mark works with Sybase. I don't know if Sybase is still around, but we'll say he works with Sybase. I'll save that. And then finally, Jay Smith here will say that he works with SQL Server. So I'll have two people who work with SQL Server. So Jay Smith, and he works with SQL Server and with Oracle. So he works with both. And I'll save this. So two folders, two file names in each folder, certainly enough to prove the concept. Well, if I query from TBL Resume Word Docs right now, not putting any qualifiers on the query, I actually get 6 rows in here. 2 of them are the folders. Notice how the file stream is null. So any file stream entries of null in here with a name are probably referring to a folder. Actually, if I come in here further, notice how the parent path locator is null for those, but it's populated for the 2 paths for the 2 sets of Word documents. And as I come out further, the file type is null. And if I come at it further, we got is directory set to 1. So we can actually query from here and take a look at what the directories are. Now, I want to stop and talk about something else. If you work a lot with SQL Server 2008, you may recall that there was a data type in SQL Server 2008 called the HierarchyID. The HierarchyID, as the name implied, allowed you to store hierarchical references to data within a SQL Server table. There was actually a separate data type called the HierarchyID. Microsoft is actually utilizing the HierarchyID inside of the FileTable. So a lot of people make the comment that the FileTable is actually a combination of the FileStream and the HierarchyID coming together. And that's actually a great way to think of this, because it's actually utilizing the capabilities of the HierarchyID to maintain and to manage and to be able to query from this entire folder structure. Well, what I want to do is I want to get the resumes that had the word SQL Server in it. And I also want to actually get the name of the folder. I don't want to get anything other than the name. Well, SQL Server has a new function that's part of FileTable, and it's called get file namespace path. So we can actually utilize the FileStream object and call file namespace path to actually convert that file stream into file location. So I'm going to grab the stream ID, the name, and I'm going to call the function get file namespace path from that file table. I'm going to put a where clause on it, utilizing the full text search, and utilize the function contains. And I want to find all of those where, and I want a little bit of syntax on FileStream, since we can't put a space in there. You can actually see where SQL Server, where the 2 words are near each other, without any other distance in between. So I'll execute this query, and now I get the 2 resumes, Kevin Goff and Jay Smith. And notice how I get a nice version of the file location here. Actually gives me the folder, the resumes on the East Coast, on the West Coast, or wherever they happen to be. So we could have had hundreds, thousands of Word documents where there's no set structure for the content, no set structure for the file name. We simply have free-form Word documents that have been stored in this folder. And with file text search set on for the database and for this table, and with a full text index created, we can actually implement full text search and essentially query from these Word documents. This opens up tremendous possibilities for people who need a full text search against documents or other type of content. So between this and the example I showed just a few minutes ago with the JPEGs, basic examples, but hopefully meaningful enough that you can see scenarios where you can actually maintain any type of file using DML statements, or to query from it using full text search capabilities. So coming back to the slide deck here. So what we just did here, after installing the Microsoft Filter Pack, which I'd already had installed along with Service Pack 1, I've got the 2 URLs for this. We can create a full text index using the primary key from the file table, and we can query that file table and turn around and search on the documents. And we have that very important function, get file namespace path, that's associated with a file stream, that'll basically take that hierarchy ID and turn around into a file location that's obviously going to be much easier to read. So this is the new file table feature. Now this particular demo this week probably was going to be a little shorter. This is more specialized feature. Wanted to give it its own coverage. Want to give it its own coverage for this particular week. So this is something that more and more people are probably going to want to take a look at as time goes on. I know that the HierarchyID was maybe viewed as maybe a little bit of a niche feature in SQL Server 2008. Some people utilize the FileStream. Probably over time, this is going to be a more popular feature as people see the ability to integrate freeform content in a folder structure with DML statements inside of a file table. So at this point, just to do a quick review of what we looked at over the last 3 weeks. Just jump back here to the beginning of the slides. Don't have an easy way to navigate back to a particular page, so I'll just come back to the beginning here. We've taken a look so far at the new column store index that's in SQL Server 2012, and for anybody who didn't see the first week, the new column store index is primarily going to be utilized in data warehousing and data mart environments, and implements a column store as opposed to a row store index that is highly compressed and is going to give us tremendous performance enhancements over any prior index in SQL Server. The data from each column is kept together, so each data page contains data from a single column, and we can get query performance increases a factor of 10 or greater. Queries that might have been running in 10 minutes might run in less than a minute or even a matter of 20, 30 seconds in some instances. And the resulting index, because it's utilizing the VertiPack technology that was implemented in Power Pivot back in 2010, you get compression on that column store index that's at least a factor of 8 and sometimes even greater. Now, this is a read-only index, and so it's really only going to be of use in data warehouse and data mart scenarios. But it's also going to have advantages for processes that read from data warehouses and data marts to populate OLAP cubes, possibly even in OLAP scenarios that utilize a ROLAP methodology to pass queries back to the relational data store. So this new column store index is something that can be dropped and recreated when data marts or data warehouses are updated on a periodic basis, and can give tremendous increases in query performance. And I went through a diagram in the first week about how the fact that the column store index gets its efficiencies from the fact that a lot of redundant data associated with a particular column can obviously be identified and then compressed. So the column store index just simply provides much greater possibilities for increases in scan and buffer rate hits. And along with the new column store index, we have the new batch processing mode that takes previously expensive operators like a hash match for joins or for aggregations, and can provide increases of, once again, at least a factor of 10 and maybe even up to 40 times faster than before. So a hash match that might have taken a minute can now run in seconds. And so we saw some queries back in that first week that previously might have taken a minute or two that can now run in seconds, because the new column store index utilizes this batch processing mode to read rows in sets of, to read packets in sets of about 1,000 rows as opposed to reading row by row. And the syntax for it was very simple. We simply create a column store non-clustered index on a table. It's part of a data mart or data warehouse, and we can include all of the columns. And typically, you will include all the columns. And we saw some of the restrictions on a column store index. It can't participate with certain data types. It's a read-only index. It can't be maintained when rows are inserted into a table. It has to be dropped and recreated. Can't include sparse columns. Can't serve as a primary key or a foreign key. So some restrictions for it. It's it's primarily going to be used in data warehouse and data mart scenarios. Any other scenario, not likely that it's going to be able to be leveraged. And then here are some benchmarks on the performance and on the number of logical reads. So with a clustered index compared to a non-covering index compared to a column store index, we see tremendous benefits in terms of a reduction of the number of logical reads and a reduction in the number of milliseconds for the query to execute. And then last week saw the new T-SQL features, and they are again part of the Management Studio solution that's part of this download. One of the nice features in SQL Server 2012 is actually a combination of a T-SQL features as well as a new database object called a sequence generator. Essentially, a new table independent identity capability, so that we can have integer values that are unique across all the tables in a database, in a particular database. So, if you were previously using a unique identifier or utilizing your own approach to try to maintain a unique set of integers across tables in a database, you can now utilize the sequence generator. We also saw the new paging construct that allows us to add two new keywords, optional keywords at the end of an order by statement called offset and fetch. So if you are querying from an ordered set and maybe you want to grab not the first 10 rows, but maybe 10 rows starting in row 41, because you're implementing some kind of a paging result set. Well, you can now specify an offset for the number of rows you essentially want to skip, and then how many rows that you want to fetch. So this goes beyond the row number scenario that many people utilized back to SQL Server 2005, where people would generate a row number and then query from that row number once it's materialized. Well, we can now use offset and fetch to go directly against the internal row number that SQL Server is going to generate. We also saw some new analytic window functions. We actually saw many of them, and I used the example last week of some test scores that we might have. I deal with test scores all the time as an instructor. Well, we might want to know things like the median average, the absolute median average, the interpolated median average if we have an even number of observations, the high score overall, or the high score up to and including a certain row that's ordered a certain way, a percentile rank as well as a cumulative distance from either the lowest score or the highest score going on through the rest of the scores. And we also saw the lag lead capability that's in SQL Server 2012 that allows us, if we want to, in any type of an order result set, go back and display either the previous row or the next row. So I have an example showing sales by month, where I'm showing the sales for both the current month as well as what was the sales last month as well as the previous month. So if we need to show some kind of a basic trend-based output displaying data for both the current month as well as the prior month, instead of utilizing a stealth join or a subquery or a common table expression to offset by 1 month, we could actually implement lag and lead into the query itself. And then some other smaller T-SQL features. We have the ability to redefine the result set coming back from a stored procedure. We can redefine the column names of the data types. We have some new format functions to convert currencies to different currency formats. We have the ability to throw the original error in a try-catch block. Some new basic functions to concatenate strings or to get the end of the month. So some nice helper functions in the T-SQL language as well. And then obviously what we looked at this week, the new FileTable capability. So shorter demo this week because FileTable still a little bit more of a specialized feature, but hopefully one that people are going to be utilizing in the future. I definitely have intentions to use this, and it's definitely worth taking a look at. Now, next week is actually going to be a two-part week for a very special topic. Any developer is going to have a set of favorite features in a particular product. And I really like all the features in SQL Server 2012. But the topics we're going to look at over the next 2 weeks, on April the 13th and on April the 20th, are personally two of my favorites. We're going to cover the new features in SQL Server Integration Services. If you use integration services right now, and you love part of it, but some parts can drive you a little bit crazy sometimes, you are probably going to love what they've done with SQL Server 2012 with integration services. Microsoft has implemented a lot of improvements in SSIS. They've also implemented a lot of new features as well. They've taken a very good tool and they made it even better. And there's so many new features in SSIS, we're actually going to stretch it out over a 2-week period. Now, if you are new to integration services, or maybe you're just curious, what will integration services do for you? I'm going to actually showcase the features by walking through an actual ETL scenario. So that's part of why I'm stretching this out over 2 weeks, is not just to show some of the new features, but to actually walk through creating a full version of SSIS package that you might create in production. I'm going to take a fairly common data warehousing pattern and implement an ETL scenario using integration services. So if you have any interest at all in data extracts, in loading data as a job, you'll definitely want to check the next 2 weeks out. And see, we have a question here. The housekeeping process can move the files around, and the file IDs will remain the same. And as I read through this question, I'm assuming that coming back to the demo here, so let me come back to my desktop. And let me go out to that folder where I had the Word documents. Tell you what, I'm gonna move those files to 2 different folders, and let's see what happens. have not tried this, so I'm gonna roll the dice here. I'm gonna create two new folders altogether, and I'll simply just call it folder A and folder B. It doesn't matter what I call it. And hopefully I'm understanding the question correctly. I'm going to take the 2 documents that were in East Coast, and I'm going to cut and paste into folder A, and then go to the West Coast files and cut and paste both of those and put them into folder B. So my East Coast and West Coast folders now no longer have the files. They're in folder A and folder B. And so I'm assuming that the question is, if I come back and run this query, that it's going to pick up the changes. I have no reason to believe that it won't, but I have not tried it. So I will simply rerun this query, and hopefully it'll spot the files being in those 2 different folders. So I'll execute this query, and let's take a look at file location, and that behaved exactly the way we would want it to. It picked up the folder change. So for the person who asked the question, I believe his name is Steve. Just let me know if that answers your question, if I understood the question correctly. And we've actually come to a conclusion, ending a few minutes before the hour here. So once again, if you are interested in pulling down the demos here, let me come back to my slides. And go back up to my bio page here. All you need to do is just go out to my website, just www.kevinsgoff.net, and actually I have a separate category called Microsoft Webcast. And so if you go out to that site and go to the Microsoft Webcast category on the right, I got a separate category for there. And as the demo code becomes available on the Friday morning of each new webcast, I'll have the download available. And so you can pull down the slide deck as well as the demo code. So that's the only thing you need to write down here. And as we get into subsequent weeks, the download code for the next set of weeks will become available. On the site here, you can register for the live event for the next couple of weeks. And as the registration links become available, I believe more registration links have become available. I need to update these, but this represents a schedule the rest of the way for some of the other new features that are in SQL Server 2012 that we're going to talk about. So again, just kevin@goff.net. And again, I work and train for a company called SetFocus. We offer online interactive trading using video conferencing. Feel free to check out our site at setfocus.com. We also have 100 hours of free training that's actually lifted from our actual online classes in .NET, SQL Server, Business Intelligence, and SharePoint. I'm actually the SQL Server and Business Intelligence practice manager for SetFocus and also do a lot of instruction. And so if you want to check out our free training site, you can just go to freetraining.setfocus.com. Now, you do have to register online. The registration is free. You just need to provide a valid email address, and you can gain almost immediate access to over 100 hours of free training we have in different categories. Okay, and Steve just responded. Okay, glad that answered the question. And so that concludes the webinar for today. So thank you all for coming. Everybody have a great weekend and enjoy the hopefully nice spring weather wherever you are. And we will see you back here same time, same station next week, where we start our two-part series on what's new with SQL Server integration services. So have a great weekend, everybody, and so long, and hopefully see you next week.